Hey, great to have you here. So back today with another One Piece video. So just played another tournament after my recent video that you may have seen where I had my first tournament win. Played in a tournament today and we got back-to-back wins, which was awesome to have. So there's less people competing today, but at the same time, there was only one winner card because of that. So less people competing, but less chances to get a winner card ultimately. So quickly gonna run through my matches and just talk about them and then open this card up and see what we get. Hoping probably for the Chopper. I know that, and I think the Edison's pretty highly coveted. I probably just don't want maybe a Pudding or the Ace again, so could be a 50-50 what we get with that one. But so first matchup we had was Black Yellow Luffy. So this is somewhat of a staple at local tournaments at least. And had a pretty good draw against this guy. I covered the board pretty quickly, so had a lot of bodies out there. He did the typical kids thing where he got his leader up to 7,000 power, but I believe I had a couple SR choppers out there, so pretty much just put one Don on them and then put two on my leader and was swinging 7 a bunch of times. Got him down pretty quickly and didn't give him a whole lot of time to build up the board too much. I think he had a blocker Sabo at one point, but beyond that, he didn't get too much on his board in time. It was a pretty quick match too. I think it was only like 14 minutes because he wanted to play another one afterwards as well. So entered that one relatively quickly. Second matchup was against Marco, and I know this guy's pretty good as a competitor, and I wasn't sure how the Marco matchup would work, but it seems like it was in my favor if I had good card draw early to try to smother the board, similar to what I did with Black Yellow Luffy. So played a lot of animal cards out there and had like the just shut up and come with us to put another character out there. So got 5 characters on the board quickly, and whenever he put somebody out there and attacked, I would typically kill it quickly. He put a couple blockers out there too, so swung at life and had those get killed when they blocked. So ultimately was helped out by that situation by just having more characters than he did and beating him before he got to those higher down turns, because I know Marco specifically likes to run Rayleigh, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And he did play, I think it was a Whitebeard where it's you can rest him and then you can KO somebody on the opposing side. So a little bit tough to deal with that because that's something that's going to counteract you. But if you have enough characters, it becomes not as relevant. That one I think I got pretty lucky with getting another good card draw with getting characters. I also went second in both of the matchups. I think I played better going second. We actually rolled the dice and had the same dice roll twice, and a third dice roll to put me going second. So I think similar to the first round, just having bodies quickly is what was helpful, because Marco, he can get tough, and as I mentioned, I'll talk about that here shortly. So it was 2-0, and then ultimately played my wife in my third matchup. So she was playing Belo Betty. Similar one where I just want to go quickly at them, and I think I did a good balance of, hey, let's go for the character here, let's go for the life here, but I had a really bad card draw at first because I drew like 2 Diablo Jambes in my hand and it was on my mulligan, so I was pretty much stuck with that, and I knew she didn't really play with blockers, so those were going to be dead cards in my hand. So I was a little concerned from the beginning, but then from there I drew like the SR Chopper on my card draws, so it was more helpful in getting cards eventually, and I was trying to limit the board she had. The one downside was she had a lot of cards in hand, so I was thinking she probably would have more counter than normally with Belo Betty, because you're normally dumping a card when you use her ability. But we got to a point where I pulled Dragon, and on my last turn, I played the 8-cost Dragon, swung a bunch of times with my other characters first, and then put the 2 Dawn on one of my other characters, swung with that one, then swung with Dragon for 10. So that was ultimately an effective finishing card for once. I feel like Dragon a lot of times I'm not sure, because I'll have like Kid and Killer in my hand and Dragon. I'm like, I can only pick one. Which one do I go with? More often than not, I go with Kid and Killer, but in this instance, I only had Dragon, so we went with that. Definitely a close matchup because I was on the brink of losing to potentially the next turn. Was 3-0 at the end. At that point, I was the only one who was undefeated, so I played against the Marco that I played earlier because he was also 2-1. I'm surprised they went with that because technically my wife was also 2-1, but they chose him. I think he had a higher percentage of opponents win, so got matched up against Marco again. For the dice roll, he said low roll. He rolled Snake Eyes, and I rolled double 6s, so he got to go second that time. So already at somewhat of a disadvantage for what I'm trying to do. And on my first turn, couldn't play anything. And then from there, I feel like I just was a little bit slower out the gate. And whenever I tried to use the just shut up and come with us, he had that Whitebeard out there. He held that off until I think he wanted me to use it, put the SR Chopper out there, then he tapped that guy and killed the Chopper. So I was a little reluctant to use it, but eventually I did wind up using it. Because I didn't get to him early, he was able to get to those later down turns, and he played like a Sanji. And because Marco's ability is to put a card potentially back on top, he put the Rayleigh on top. Then he used Sanji, flipped the Rayleigh. So both Sanji and Rayleigh got played the same turn. It's like 17,000 power in one card play. So super effective turn. And he was just KOing my bodies left and right. So I didn't have a whole lot of board presence that time around. And he did, which is tough because his board presence was like 8,000, 9,000 people. And typically if I have board presence, it's like 3,000 to 4,000, so definitely not to my advantage. I had my final turn. We wound up going into overtime. I think he had 1 life in overtime, and I wasn't sure how to approach it because I had some rush characters of lower cost. I had the dragon, but I knew I was going to have to hit him a few times. And because of that, I chose the route of going with the smaller characters. I don't think I could have done anything either way because he had like 8 cards in hand and he had, I think he said 12k of counter or something like that. So he had a ton of counter that there's no way I was going to hit him with multiple hits. So I wound up swinging into him with my leader for 7. He counters it. I wound up swinging into him with Zoro for 7. He winds up countering it. At that point, I was going to play Kid and Killer to try to finish it, but I couldn't hit him twice with that. So I was just like, all right, I'm just going to put something out on the board. And then next turn, he ultimately killed me. And the good news was, after beating me, because of how everything played out, I was still the highest percentage 3-in-1 player there. So the last match didn't wind up mattering, me losing that one, but was super pumped to get a winner card. I obviously wanted to go 4-0 again, but either way, was happy to get this card. And overall, a pretty good day. As I mentioned, going second's a huge part for my deck specifically, especially because my opponents typically also want to go second. So that can have a lot of impact on who winds up doing better because of that, I don't know, 8-don turn potentially for folks. For me specifically, I think it's my second turn. Having the 4-don turn instead of the 3-don turn is huge because you can either play the SR Chopper and keep one for the just shut up and come with us, or you can put a Don on your leader or do something else. There are a lot more options when you have the 4-don turn instead of your 3-don turn, obviously, but it feels like for my deck specifically, I have a lot of 3-cost characters, so having that extra one to do something with is definitely a big impact. So either way, felt like a good opportunity to play a tournament again and got back-to-back wins. I don't know how long we'll go with Zoro at this point, but it's been effective thus far. So let's take a look and open up this winner card and see what we get. Is it the ace again? I think it could be the ace again. Gonna have a playset at this point if it is. I don't want to damage it. It's only one. I always feel like these 1 cards are always tough. Yep. So it is. We got the ace again. So not what I would have picked because we already have the ace. He's actually back there in the case there. So another ace card. So as I mentioned, if you want to watch the video of my first tournament win, you can watch that one. Pulled this card in that one too. So we're going to have a play set of ace cards eventually maybe, but at least we have 2 thus far. It's still cool to get a winner card even if it's the same card that one that I probably didn't necessarily want, but fun opportunity to play in tournaments either ways. As I mentioned in my prior video, if there's any tournament experience you have that you want to talk about, love to discuss down in the comments below because it's interesting to see how mechanics work when people are playing with certain decks and how they choose to approach their opponent's leader as well. As any comments down below would appreciate that. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.